Johnson's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Democrats must have been given their talking points on Project 2025 yesterday at the internal meeting of the conference to determine who the next presidential candidate will be for the Democrat Party. This is the second committee I've sat through this morning, including financial services, and Project 2025 has come up at least a dozen times. I just find that interesting. Mr. Patel, Unilever is a publicly traded company, meaning you have fiduciary duty to deliver returns to shareholders, correct?
Yes, sir.
In your 2023 annual report, you identify consumer preferences as a principal risk to your business. In examining this risk, you stated our success depends on value and relevance of our brands and products to consumers around the world. Would you agree that it's got to be a critical element in managing that risk because you have to continue to grow consumer preference of your brands, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. And you do that through brand and marketing investments, or advertisements, I guess is another way of describing that, right?
That's how we build brands.
But between 2021 and 2023, Unilever spent more than $23 billion on brand and marketing investments. That's a fairly big chunk of your operating costs, I'm sure. Would it be fair to say that Unilever believes brand marketing delivers a positive return on investment?
So that's why we invest, to build our brands and the equity, and that's why we're in 90% of US households.
Right, but if consumer preference is still at risk, you could always do better, correct? I mean, that's obviously the goal.
The business could always grow better.
Right. So let me ask you this. If consumer preference is vital to the success of your company, you acknowledge that a principal risk and commit billions of dollars each year to mitigating that risk, then why would you boycott companies that reach millions of consumers? It doesn't make any sense. You've got this goal in place, you're pursuing it, but yet you're still pursuing boycotts.
So we don't boycott. We have a clear internal process. Our brands have jobs to be done. We have target audiences that we look for our brands. Actually, 80% of our marketing spend goes between 18 and 49-year-old women because they make 80% of the purchasing decisions for our business. And that's how we set our choices on investment. What's right for our brands to give us the best business return on investment.
What about Twitter? Has there been any boycotting of Twitter? It would be in the best interest of growing your consumer preference and delivering returns to shareholders to have to utilize Twitter to make sure that your brands are continuing to grow, right?
So on Twitter, or X as it's known now, there was a period in 2019, 2020, due to brand safety, that we pulled our investment, but we have now returned to Twitter across the world.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shapiro, can you explain the importance, I don't want to oversimplify this, can you explain the importance of advertising dollars to growing Daily Wire into the company that it is today?
Sure. So the truth is that advertising dollars represent a far smaller share of the revenue of the Daily Wire than they did at the very beginning. When you're first starting a company, the possibility of starting it off the basis of subscribers alone is very difficult because you actually don't have tremendous market reach. The gradual increase in revenue is largely due to advertiser revenue. So at the beginning of the Daily Wire, nearly 100% of all revenue that we had when we were building the business was based on advertising revenue. Today, it's significantly smaller than that because we have a very large subscriber base. So the principal threat that I'm here to talk about is not about the bitterness of my company, which continues to be, thank God, highly successful. The reason that I'm here is to talk about startup companies that are attempting to get into the market and are being barred from an extraordinarily large pool of advertising revenue along political lines.
Do you believe there is collective boycotts that are happening?
There's no question there are collective boycotts happening. And I will say that I do appreciate the chutzpah of some of the Democratic members of Congress, and I'm charmed by their newfound love for free markets and corporate free speech. That one seems to be a bit of a new one to me. But it is charming only in that it requires you to ignore many of the statements that they have made historically about the amount of pressure they would love to bring on private companies when it comes to free speech. And here I will quote the ranking member, quote, "These platforms are utilized as conduits to spread vitriolic hate messages into every home and country. Efforts by media companies to counter the surge have fallen short. Social network platforms continue to be used as ready avenues to spread dangerous white nationalist speech." Or, that was from 2019, from 2020, it goes way beyond the fact that big tech misbehaves. It's the fact this kind of power exists. That kind of power cannot be allowed to exist in society. When you use that sort of language with regard to the same companies we're now hearing require free speech, I find that somewhat difficult to swallow.
Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia